Welcome to episode 86 of the Juicebox Podcast. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast, just like the rest of them, is sponsored by OmniPod, the world's only tubeless insulin pump. You want to know a secret about OmniPod that's not that much of a secret? It rocks. In this episode, I talked to JoAnn. JoAnn is Adilyn's mom. Adilyn was about 1.5 years old when she was diagnosed, and very, very new to it when we had this conversation. This conversation happened many months ago. But we sat right then and there on the podcast and talked about how to help her with injections and to make her way through the beginnings of living with type 1 diabetes. This ended up being very instructional, this episode. So now's a good time to mention that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making changes to your medical plan. All right. Basil snored. That must mean to start the podcast. Here comes JoAnn. This is going to kill me, this episode. JoAnn?
I'm there.
JoAnn, so much is trying to stop me from talking to you. It's unbelievable. I'm
sorry.
I said so many things are trying to intercede and stop me from talking to you in the last 5 minutes. I think a meteor is about to fall on my head.
Let's not say that.
Dogs. My wife is overseas for work, and I haven't heard from her in, I don't know, probably 1.5 days. And I say to you, are you ready? You say yes. Then she starts texting me, hey, I'm in Denmark. And I'm like, hi.
Wow.
Now's when you text.
Give me a call later if you want to so you can chat with your wife.
Not at all. I've known her for like 25 years. It's fine.
Okay.
She and I can talk later. She's going to call me after dinner, which she's very excited to get to because she just left Sweden, where they mostly had fish, and she just doesn't like fish. So
oh, no.
I think she's very hungry as well. She said, I'm going to dinner. We're having Italian. I have to go. And I was like, you go get your Italian. And on top of that, I'm texting Arden. Her blood sugar's kind of drifting low. And I'm like, hey, you have some fruit snacks. If you ate them now, we'd be ready for lunch. And then she answers me and doesn't answer me. And she's like, I'm in the middle of something in science class. And I'm like, eat the fruit snacks. And then she doesn't answer me. And then I'm like, did you eat the fruit snacks? Like 10 minutes later. She goes, no, I forgot. I said, well, now we need to test, and you're going to have to drink a little juice, because she was like down by she was like 62. And I don't really mind her being 62. She feels fine. But
right.
we have to pre-bolus for lunch in 20 minutes. So I'm like, now drink half a juice. She's like, I hate the juice. And I'm like, I don't want to argue with you. I'm like typing. I'm like,
look forward to.
Oh my gosh. I'm like typing loudly. I'm like, you just eat the juice. So, and she's like, I'm like, I'm trying to get on a podcast. Now mom's texting me. The dog has decided that he's heard something up the street he wants to bark at. I was like, just drink the juice. So, anyway, how are you?
I am great.
It's excellent. So
I'm not as busy as you, but
only for 6 minutes. Prior to that, the 2 hours before that, I was just compiling data for prospective advertisers for the podcast, and I was just sending an email and everything. Nobody bothered me once in those 2 hours. I could have
nice and calm.
I could have spread those things out. All right, JoAnn. I am going to I'm gonna smack myself in the head with a book. No, I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself, and then we're gonna talk about what you reached out about for the podcast.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. My name is JoAnn Bond. I'm a new mom with a new superstar who is a type 1 diabetic. She is only 17 months. And I have reached out just in regards to the situation of being a new mom and everything that I have partaken in and I'm still partaking in, and the confusion, being lost, being somewhat alone, and just not knowing where do I begin, where do I start, who do I turn to. I just figured it would be a great topic to chat about.
It absolutely would. So you are like a new mom, as in this is your first baby, not like I've just had like my fourth kid or something like that.
Absolutely. Okay, first baby.
So you made a baby and it came out with a busted pancreas. And so that's fine. Listen, worse things. So are we going to say your baby's name? I'm sorry.
Adilyn is her name.
Adilyn. Okay. And so she's born 17 months ago?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And how far into Adilyn's life was she diagnosed?
8 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is all right then. Okay, let's get to it. Jeez.
Yeah, we are literally a newly diagnosed baby.
This is my first podcast where someone was sitting on a window ledge, literally. So 8
I would
weeks.
honestly say that I feel like I'm sitting on the couch compared to a window ledge, where I personally feel. If I were to compare it in a room, I'd be on the couch.
You'd be on the couch. So are you feeling pretty comfortable 8 weeks in?
Oh my gosh. I honestly don't know what has come over me, but I feel confident. I feel like I've had this problem for more than 2 years.
Wow. And how do you think you got to it so quickly? Like, how do you think let's call it the couch, because right now we're not sure if it's the couch syndrome. Maybe you're not as comfortable as you hope you are, or maybe you're just super comfortable and you got this comfort through, where did you find enough information that in 8 weeks you're feeling confident?
I don't know that it could be the couch syndrome, but I am not scared one bit. I don't have those moments where it's like, okay, what am I doing wrong? It's more of a, right, how am I going to fix this? I know how to get her out of it. I know how to correct. I know those things. I still have so much to learn. There's vocabulary and things that people say, such as, pre-bolusing. I Googled bolus. I don't know how many times. And I was like, I don't know what bolus is. And I felt like I was so lost.
Why do people keep saying bolus? So you have, JoAnn, so what you have is a confidence.
Exactly.
All right. Listen, that's a good place to start, is with confidence. And so you've had experiences that you've been able to adjust and make right. And you're seeing history for yourself, even just in 8 weeks. This happens. I do this, that happens.
It's exactly right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Good for you. And are you using any of the advanced technologies at the moment?
We have a Dexcom on her arm now. And I know it's supposed to be on the backside or her stomach, and it has done great. But, just last night she said, she didn't technically say, but she showed me that it was bothering her like crazy. So we tried a new location, and it's on her arm today. But
So I would always direct people to... I have a blog post up that's been there for a long time. I think it's called "So You Think Your Child's Too Lean for a Insulin Pump or Glucose Monitor," or something like that. I'll have to put a link in the show notes to it. And it's a photograph of Olympic skier Chris Freeman, who was a past podcast guest, wearing his OmniPod and his on his pectoral and his Dexcom on his ab. And this man has... my desk has more body fat than Chris Freeman has. So I know where the FDA says you're supposed to put these devices, but people have a lot of success putting them in other places, and good for you for that's a real, you're like a real new world DMOM because of the information you can get online and things you can see, like pictures of, skiers with their Dexcoms on their abs and stuff like that, and that kind of thing. You can go, look, okay, people did this. It worked for them. I can try it too. You can have a little more confidence. Whereas I think when my daughter was first diagnosed, if somebody would have told me anything different than what a doctor told me, I would have been like, no, the doctor said. And I would have been scared to move, but you weren't. So let's find out what's special about you. Why are you not scared? Did you grow up were you the kid who was talking back to your parents constantly and didn't listen to your teachers? And are you just not scared of anybody? Is this
okay? I'm totally laughing out loud at that because you might have it right dead on.
Okay, so you just don't listen to people, JoAnn. That's what I'm hearing.
I was that middle child that I always kept to myself, and I was always excelling, and I've always had a strong confidence, but I'm not going to lie, there was a lot of times where I wasn't as confident, but you have to just find that strength. And I think with this situation specifically, I have become a whole new person and my outlook on life. And I have a cousin whose daughter was diagnosed at 6 years old. So she reached out to me and she was talking to me, and the words, and I'll never forget it. She just said to me, "JoAnn, you have no choice. This is what you got to do. You can't say I can't. You can't say I don't know how. You're going to learn and you're going to do it. You have no choice." And it's just ringing constantly of if I ever have a doubt, which is very rarely, I got to figure it out.
I think that's excellent advice. It really is. You do hear, what do people hate to hear when you say to somebody, "Oh, my kid has type 1 diabetes. Oh, you have to give him that shot." I couldn't. And people say, "Oh, I could never do that." Well, of course you could. It's. Do you ever see the movie 27 Hours where the climber cuts off his own appendage to get out?
No, I've heard of it.
You know what I'm talking about. So
Totally.
if you ask me right now, Scott, could you ever cut off your hand? I'd say no, absolutely not. Right until you smash it in between two rocks and I'm going to die in a cavern. Then I can cut my hand off. And so
absolutely.
And that really is the whole thing. But you embraced it very quickly. I mean, 8 weeks is. I'm going to tell you a story that a few months into my daughter's diagnosis, she's diagnosed when she's 2, and this is, gosh, almost 10 years ago. A few months into it, I had like this pattern down at bedtime that was working, and I should be making air quotes because it was kind of, I didn't have any technology. Trust me, working meant she didn't die while she was asleep. It wasn't really, her blood sugars weren't great or anything like that, but I was getting through the night, I felt like. And my wife comes home very late one night from work. She'd worked very late, and she brought some like food home with her at like 9 o'clock. And Arden's like, I want some. And I looked at my wife and I was like, I had her ready for bed. And I went in, I got in the shower, like out of a bad 80s movie, and cried in the shower for like 20 minutes and then got back out and dried off and walked back in the living room because I was just I was that overwhelmed at that point. To be fair, I didn't have a Dexcom. That might have made things a little easier.
I'm still hesitant about the Dexcom.
Really?
I love it, but we were just doing so well. I mean, for her, even 8 weeks in, you say, "Can I have your finger?" and she gives me your hand.
Yeah, she might be a lot like you, maybe. Maybe
she's the biggest superstar, and I mean, I live by this motto now of "We've got this." She's got it. I got this.
Are you honeymooning? Do you need much insulin? I mean, how much does she weigh? She can't weigh very much, right?
21 pounds.
Okay, so you're not using a ton of insulin to begin with. She's probably honeymooning, like to some degree, I would imagine.
Nope, there's no honeymooning.
Oh no,
oh gosh, no.
Everything's getting covered with insulin already.
She's still been in the 400s for her levels. We've seen a couple 600s still, and then she'll hit 65. Like last night at 3 o'clock in the morning, we woke up at 65. So, I mean, we are all over the place.
Was she 65 and falling, or was she pretty steady at 65?
She was falling.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of steady right now. If we live a day with a steady, it's a steady 300.
Okay, so what's the difference between steady 300 and lower and steady? Is it your basal rates?
I have no idea. See, this comes into the idea of where I am still lost. I'm still learning.
Okay. So
all that I know is that the doctor says, hey, let's treat this. And I'm already going out on whim and giving her, we're not on a pump. So I give her insulin after she eats.
Okay.
So we do the carb ratio prior to, how much, this is what we're giving her and how much is she going to eat. Well, I've already know what my daughter's going to eat. So I'm giving her insulin prior to, like she will with the pump.
Good.
So I'm already going out on whim and doing that against Dr. Wishes, but I know she's going to get there to that point, so why not just try it out? And it's helped tremendously.
If your doctor's blood sugar was 400, they'd want their insulin sooner too. So
exactly.
Yeah. So you want to talk about this a little bit? Like
absolutely.
Methods?
Let's do it.
Let's talk about methods. Okay. So why don't we say it right here, JoAnn? Ready? Can you say it yet? Do you listen to the podcast enough, or do I have to say it? Nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. All right, now let's talk about your kid and what we can do here. So, injections makes it a little more challenging because you can't just push a button and it involves a needle and everything, but okay. So first thing, slow-acting insulin. You're injecting it once every 24 hours?
Correct, every night before she goes to bed.
Let's inject it twice every 12 hours, half that amount. So how much are you injecting when she goes to bed?
3 units of Lantus.
So do a unit and a half at night and a unit and a half in the morning. You might get more even coverage of the Lantus that way. I wouldn't tell you that I know anything about Lantus. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I can tell you that a very, very long time ago, before the internet was what it was, I stumbled upon a board where pharmaceutical salespeople, it was kind of like a gripe board for pharma salespeople. And I stumbled into this thread and I don't remember which slow-acting insulin they were talking about, but one of them said, I feel bad telling doctors that our slow-acting insulin lasts 24 hours when we know it only lasts 18. And then I split my slow-acting insulin for my daughter right then and there. I'm not the only person to do that. A lot of people would tell you that they do that. So instead of three units or whatever you're doing, if somebody's listening and they do 10, instead of doing that amount once a day, every about 12 hours, do half and half. And then you should get a more even coverage, because these slow-acting insulins, they collect under your skin in a crystal, and they just kind of melt away slowly. And sometimes they melt away faster than they're supposed to. And then sometimes when you see a low blood sugar for no reason when you're on a slow-acting insulin, it could be because your Lantus or Levemir or whatever you're using just kind of made you a little lower. Because it worked faster. When it works faster, it uses itself up, and then at some point down the line, it's gone when you still need it before you've injected more.
So that might help me with the benefit of the fact that she's been dropping, because we've been starting to maintain her lately, but she's been dropping every night. I've had to wake up in the middle of the night and get her, 4 ounces of milk.
It absolutely could be maybe 6 or so hours or wherever wherever you're seeing that drop maybe into it. Maybe it's burning a little quicker right then and there for some reason. So it's worth a shot.
Interesting.
Okay. And,
awesome.
So that's a little better. Now we can't manipulate like we can with. Are we thinking about a pump?
Yeah, OmniPod. She's such a all over the place child that a cord would be definitely no fun. So we're going for the OmniPod.
I'm going to break right here and put the ad in later. So this episode was recorded about 6 months ago, but I've kept in touch with JoAnn since then, and Adilyn is using the OmniPod now, and she's loving it. You could be too. Go to myomnipod.com/demo. OmniPod will send you a free, no obligation demo pod. Once you've decided that you'd like to use the OmniPod, they'll help you with your insurance company, get the whole thing switched over, and before you know it, you are going to receive a care package in the mail full of insulin pumps, little pods, PDMs, all kinds of great stuff to get your life going with tubeless insulin pumping. It's not that hard to switch. I know sometimes new things seem like they require a lot of effort, but this is not one of them. myomnipod.com/demo. You're well on your way. The next thing you know, you could be just like Adilyn, toddling along with your tubeless insulin pump, kicking diabetes square in the butt, having great blood sugars, being stable. I can't tell you enough. It's fantastic. It really is. It genuinely is. It is a huge part of how I manage my daughter's type 1 diabetes every day. And it's wonderful. I mean, that's the end of it. You got to do it. You have to. If you're using a tube pump now, think about switching. If you're doing injections, take it to the next level. Get in a situation where you can eat 3 carbs and give yourself insulin. It sounds crazy, but sometimes that's the difference between an 85 blood sugar and a 110 blood sugar. And, over time, that's how A1Cs add up. Put yourself in a position to do the best that you can for yourself. I mean, that really is how I feel about this whole diabetes thing. Just attack it. No better weapon to have in your pocket when you're attacking diabetes than an OmniPod. Go to myomnipod.com/demo to get started today. Once you get to a pump and you can manipulate the basal rates more, I was just telling somebody yesterday that after my last couple of episodes where I was talking with Dana and Scott about their DIY pancreas, artificial pancreas, I'm even trying to think about basal rates more specifically than I have in the past. One of them made that statement, that the artificial pancreas knows when to titrate up or down your basal rate, and that so much of that, how a steady blood sugar is on that kind of rotating, not rotating, but an ever moving basal, not just setting it or having a couple per day, but having it move around a lot. I don't know how to make myself into an artificial pancreas, but I've been paying more attention to it. But for now, okay, let's try to split your slow acting for now. Now, okay, let's go through a normal day. Wake up in the morning and we're going to eat breakfast. Where's our blood sugar?
Normally what we are waking up to is about 300 right now. Only because, I guess I should take that out just because the last couple days, hard dairy, I have found as a new mom, with trial and error, dairy is just a major spiker. I cannot do whole milk. 4 ounces last night at 12:30 put her in the 300s when she woke up at 6 today.
Okay, so we'll start there then. 12:30, what's her blood sugar, and you give her the milk?
She was at 62.
Okay, and you gave her 4 ounces.
4 ounces of whole milk.
Okay, so I don't know how many carbs are in 4 ounces of whole milk, but...
Well, there is 12 carbs in 8 ounces, so it's only 6.
6, okay. So, Here's the real, like, here's one of the leaps you have to make if you're going to control spikes, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be able to bolus while you're covering a low. And if you have a Dexcom, you can do it. So my example would be that even though a couple of months ago when Arden's blood sugar got down to 30 and was falling in the middle of the night, when she took in like 60 carbs for that, I bolused for 40 of those carbs after her blood sugar stabilized.
Okay.
Because
there are times where it's like I want to give her insulin when I know what milk does to her.
Right.
But I need to raise it. So I'm like, do you give her this just to get her up?
Yeah.
Or I give her insulin too.
So don't think of it as like what the milk does. Think of it like this. You have to, you need to trust that the insulin's going to do what the insulin's going to do, except sometimes it might do more or less than you expect. Mm-hmm. But you really need to, at the same time, you have to accept that carbs are going to do what they're going to do, with the exception of when they don't. But for the most part, they do. So if she's 64 and you gave her, 4 ounces of milk and it moved her to 300, the first thing I would tell you is that I bet you next time you should just give her 1 ounce of milk, because you're really just trying to get her back to 90, right?
Yes, and what I have found is I have done half and half at night and morning, half almond milk and half whole milk.
Mm-hmm. You just anything, right? Like just to bump it, because she's not hungry. Mm-hmm. You're just trying to bump the blood sugar.
Exactly.
You can't shut off your basal because you don't have a pump yet. But like, if Arden was 64 last night, I would have maybe shut off her basal for a half an hour and given her the equivalent of maybe a half of a juice box, which the juice box I use is like 15 carbs. So I would have been right there, and I would have expected her blood sugar to hopefully get up into like the 80s or 90s.
It stinks about my daughter. She doesn't like juice.
Well, yeah, milk's fine. I'm saying milk's fine too. Arden uses milk sometimes too. With juice boxes.
But it's hard for me because how much I see her spike with that milk.
Right.
It's like I want to give her honey, but when I'm waking her up in the middle of the night and making her drink milk, she's sleeping while she's doing this.
Right.
I guarantee you she has no idea she's awake.
No, Arden doesn't remember most of what happens. Yeah. I was like, you were low last night? And she's like, no. I was like, you ate a banana? She's like, I did. But yeah, my first thought for you right there is you have a Dexcom 64, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, hold on a second. While we're talking about blood sugars, here's Arden texting about her lunch. You mind if we do? You want to do a blood sugar together with me at lunch? Okay.
Let's do this.
All right. She says pre-lunch. I say hey. Hey gives me time to look at her Dexcom. Dexcom says 79 diagonal up, so the half a juice that I gave her for the 62 20 minutes ago is in full swing, and I am going to tell her this. She wants to know if she can throw the rest of the juice away. She didn't drink. I say yes. Now, temp basal. Let's call it, it's all just my vibe about how her blood sugar's been. Let's call temp basal 60% increase for 2 hours. Now she's 72 diagonal up right now. She had about six carbs worth of juice about 20 minutes ago. And then we are going to bolus. What was in that lunch? Watermelon, chips, carrots, sandwich, a chocolate chip cookie homemade, something else, a juice box. What do we think that is? Let's call it 8 units. What the hell, huh? Okay, so bolus, 8 units, extend. So I'm going to break up the bolus. Let's do 50% now, and the balance of it over a half an hour. So that means 4 units will go in now. The other 4 units will go in over the next 30 minutes. And I've increased her basal rate by 60% for 2 hours to cover the spike that usually comes 90 minutes after lunch this year. She is going to say yes, she understands. Okay. I say love you. She may make fun of me or say love you back, and then this is over. Let's see. Okay, we've gotten off the beaten path for you, but let's get back to the milk. Arden's all.
But I'm not going to say this is actually kind of on my beaten path of me as a new mama, listening to every single one of that. I'm just like, what?
Okay, ready?
I'm sitting here saying, can I do that?
I'm on the wrong podcast. No, wait. So here's what I did, right?
No, I get everything you did.
Yeah.
don't have to do that yet. And I am one of those people that let me do it, and I got this.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So a lot of what I just accomplished, you can't do without the pump. You can't split the bolus. You got to visually
see it.
Right. Well, you can't split a bolus. You can't give 4 units incrementally over 30 minutes. You can't, you can't turn up your Lantus. So I basically just turned up her slow acting insulin, her Lantus, which she doesn't use anymore, but her basal rate.
Right.
And I gave her enough insulin to get that 72 to level off 15 minutes from now around 90, and then start dropping about 25 minutes from now, so that as her food's really starting to affect her blood sugar should level out right around 100 somewhere a half an hour from now. And you and I will still be talking half an hour now, so we can test that theory.
Cool.
Okay. So first thing I would say to you is that last night, if you did 4 ounces of milk, I would have done 1 ounce of milk. I would have waited 15 minutes and see what happens. Unless she's 64-2 down, and then I would have probably panicked and let her drink all the milk. But if you're just 64 and with were you diagonal down, or what was the Dexcom when you were at the 64 last night?
Here comes the honesty. I don't remember. All I remember is my Dexcom telling me we're low.
Beep, beep, beep.
So I woke up, I went straight, and I tested her, and she was at 64.
Okay.
I didn't look at the double arrows. I didn't do anything. I just said, okay, she's low. Let's treat it.
So the 64 is meaningful, but if it's 64 and steady, if you looked at that graph and she's been 64 for an hour or a half hour, then you need very little to bump her to 90. If she's 64 and diagonal down, straight down, 2 hours down, then you probably need twice as much to because then you have to stop the fall, and then by the time the fall stops, you have to bring it back up again. So that's one thing. So probably last night you needed less milk, but what happens? I'm gonna make a guess here. What's your high threshold on the Dexcom? When's it tell you you're high?
I have it set to 400.
Okay. So let's just throw the Dexcom away. You don't need it. You don't need it. Throw it away. You don't want it. And so
I'm gonna laugh. I laugh at it because people always, and I join Facebook groups and I post on how excited I am, and people comment about where my settings are, and I'm like, yeah, I have it really high because I don't need my phone going off. I don't need the Dexcom going off constantly because I know she's going to hit over 400 at night.
JoAnn, I'm about to save you. Ready?
What?
You're thinking about it wrong.
I am?
Yes. Ready? You need to know way before then so you can do something about it. You're accepting she's going to 400. I'm telling you, if you set your high threshold lower, she'll never go over 200.
Yeah, but how do I get to correct that when I can only give her insulin after she eats? Well, technically, I can go. I don't have a problem giving it prior to eating, but she's not on a pump. You're
going to correct with a needle, and then you're going to learn from that, and then you're not going to get high again. Here we go. We're going to talk about it.
All right.
So first of all, so now we go into a meal idea. I understand she's little and it's tough, but you are giving her insulin prior to her eating. Like, you've got a good feeling for how much she eats, right? So you're not too scared to give it a little before. Plus, you can see the Dexcom. So, I would say this. If I could see her prior to a meal and she was 150, and I was fairly confident that she was going to eat, I don't know, a certain amount of carbs that would require a certain amount of insulin, I'd be comfortable giving her that insulin. I know she's little, but 10 minutes before she eats, because what you want is hopefully that 150 to be more like 100 and drifting down when she starts to eat. So the fight between the food and the insulin's happening around 100 and not at 250, right?
So here's my next, struggle as a new mama is finding out the foods. I really have found that protein has been a good balancer. I don't even know if that's right, but I feel like having protein at every one of her meals, she doesn't spike as high as if she didn't have protein.
But that's good. But at the same time, if you get the insulin in sooner, then your findings are going to end up being different too.
Really?
Okay. So first of all, and a lot of it's to do with what her blood sugar is prior. If she was 60 when you gave her a meal, I'd let her start eating, and then after 5 or 10 minutes of eating, I'd give her the insulin. If she was 160 before the meal, I'd give her all the insulin 10 minutes before, and then let her start eating, because I'm hoping that her blood sugar's around 100 and falling when the food starts to go in. So I just think of it as like a tug of war, right? The insulin's on one side, the carbs are on the other. And if you give one of them too much of a head start, you're never going to get it back to the middle again. So most of this is understanding how the insulin works. If you're too high, you've either mistimed or miscalculated how much insulin you need. And if you're too low, you've either mistimed or miscalculated how much insulin you need. So it's a lot about understanding how long the insulin takes to work in your daughter. And then
it usually takes about 20 minutes.
And giving that insulin at a right time based on her blood sugar. If my daughter is 200 and we're going to eat in a half an hour, I would give her entire mealtime bolus almost a half an hour before we ate, hoping that she'd be 90 by the time we ate.
Okay, I like that.
Right? So here's what's happening to you. You're going up after a meal, and you're not being told about it. You have the Dexcom, but the Dexcom's not telling you anything. So by the time she gets to 400, which I'm guessing is generally,
15, 20 minutes after she eats.
That fast. Okay. All right. So, you got me with that one. I didn't expect that. Okay, hold on. Let's not get dizzy. Okay. So if you're 400, 15 minutes after you ate, are you ever getting low in the 2.5 hours after that?
Oh, yeah.
So you're going up to 400 and then coming back down again.
Wrapping.
Let me get a drink.
Yeah, I mean,
this isn't going to be easy.
She was over sitting steady at 400 high.
Right.
Granted, it could have been. This is my daycare provider. She's heaven. I mean, she was great when Addie was diagnosed. She was at the hospital with us every single day learning. So she is right there with us, and I have the Dexcom where I can see it on my phone at work and watch it. And she was at 400 steady and just dropped straight to 100.
Okay, let me yell at Basil first. Basil, we're doing a podcast, so you got to lay down. It's not okay, buddy. Okay, now let's get back to that. That's crazy. So you're going from wherever she starts when she eats to 400 and back to 100. And what's the amount of time that takes to happen?
All within an hour.
All within an hour. And then after that first hour, she doesn't get low again or high.
No, she sits pretty steady until it's snack time.
I have to.
My daughter is crazy.
I'm ending the podcast. That's it. This is the last episode. You've stumped me. I feel like I've been stumped. Well, so she's only real high for a short amount of time.
Exactly.
All right. Then if the amount of insulin you're using is ending you at 100, then I think that your best bet is to do a bit of a pre-bolus and try to get the insulin going prior to it to take the spike out.
And my husband and I actually did that this weekend. And we felt extremely happy with it. And my daycare provider, Tammy, I'm going to throw her name out. Tammy's amazing.
What's up, Tammy?
Tammy, I gave her the go-ahead. I said, if you are confident, try it. We were happy with it, the results this weekend. I wasn't doing the whole, okay, is she sitting at a number? Okay, let's do 10 minutes. If she's at 200, let's do it right now, even though it's 30 minutes away. That's a whole other perspective that I'm going to take into consideration, absolutely. But
what were you getting? What was happening over the weekend with the pre-boluses? What was happening to the spike?
It'd go up a little bit. I would say it would go up maybe 50.
Oh, then
and it would go back down.
Then this is your answer. I mean, that's 100% your answer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, pre-bolusing is something that I was extremely excited to get to, and just that's why I was like, all right, doctor hasn't said go, I'm just going.
Yeah. What would you do in a situation if she never came back down from the 400 and she ate? Do you correct that, or do you sit and watch it till the next meal?
I kind of sit and watch it.
Okay. Why are we doing that?
My theory, and it's my own theory, I have always just, when we initially found out she had type 1, our first question to our endocrinologist was, all right, so no carbs. Then we don't have to give her insulin. And the doctor looked at me and laughed. And
cardboard. We're eating cardboard from now on.
That's a common thing. I think a lot of parents are like, all right, fine, no carbs. And the doctor's like, no, she's got to have that. You at least 3 times. So I've got this number 3 in my head. And I really want to only have her giving herself insulin 3 times a day. So it's hard for me to really want to say, you get insulin at snack. You can have insulin in your morning snack. That's just me, but I know it can happen.
Yeah, so I would think that over time, that will prove out to be difficult to maintain unless she goes to like a significantly light carb lifestyle. Like I would think that would be harder to maintain if you were having, carbohydrates, because sometimes they'll burn longer in your body or stay longer, and you'll get outside of your bolus, and then you'll start to drift up or that kind of a thing. I mean, if you go with a very low carb lifestyle, I think it's much more doable.
But only if everything's low carb. That means like at lunch, you can't have that, grilled cheese sandwich, because that's not technically low carb.
not if you're hoping to never bolus except for at meals.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I've done this a number of times on my blog, but my daughter had pancakes, like big pancakes for breakfast the other day, and her blood sugar didn't go over 160.
Well, yesterday, an example, daycare, she gave her one Girl Scout cookie. The lemon flavor, I think.
They get the little icing in the middle.
I don't know. No. I think it's just a lemonade one. It's just like a little sugar cookie.
You're gonna make me eat a cookie when we're done talking.
And she was sitting at 105, and we gave her a cookie, and that cookie took her all the way up to like 270.
I would imagine
280 with just that one cookie. So I mean, that's where it's like, do you give her a half shot prior to the cookie because she's going to eat it, or do you not?
Well, I would say, I'm guessing from my perspective, I would say yes, but what happened to the 275? Did it just sit there forever?
It sat there, and then she came home and played. It went down, and we had dinner, and I gave her what it was.
Yeah, so I would definitely say if that was me, and I was going to give her a cookie, I would bolus for the 175 points that I knew the cookie was going to make her go up, whatever that ends up being, and I'd wait 10 minutes, and then when I saw the Dexcom creeping down, I would give her the cookie.
As long as we're not running in, I mean, I don't know with pumps, do you run into stacking?
I think that stacking is something that people say, it's something that doctors tell people who don't have glucose monitors, because you don't want to stack insulin because you'll get low at some point, but you have a glucose monitor, so
I can stack away.
Who cares? Because let's say that you gave bolus for the cookie, now you don't get the spike, and then maybe 3 hours later she comes home and she plays and she gets a little low. Well, you could give her something else to stop that. And here's my thought, and this is just completely from my perspective. And I'm sorry if people hear me repeating this. You don't have diabetes. Your blood sugar is probably about 85 right now. So 275 is 190 points, or almost 3 times as high as what your blood sugar should be. And so, and I know that you're new to this, and I don't want to scare the hell out of you, but here's the way I think about it when I'm dealing with my daughter, and knowing that this fight is a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week thing that we're doing, right? Is that when you dump sugar out on the countertop and look at it, it's kind of cube and coarse and sharp. And when you break it down and look at it at its molecular level, it's still sharp and coarse. When people talk about long-term diabetes issues, what they're really saying is when they say I went blind, or I can't feel my feet, or I had a heart attack, or whatever it ends up being, what it really means is there was so much sugar in my blood that my arteries were being scraped on the inside by the excess sugar until it wore a hole through, and then I went blind, or it wore a hole through and I had a heart attack, or it wore out my arteries and my veins until I couldn't feel something, or whatever. There was no blood flow, so I couldn't feel my feet anymore. Like, you're being sandblasted from the inside out when your blood sugar is too high. So that's how I think about it. When it's 3 o'clock in the morning and Arden's blood sugar is like sticking at 160 and I can't get it to move, and all I want to do is go to sleep or run over myself with a car, I just stay up and I fix it, because I don't want her blood sugar to be double what mine is. And so it's a horrible thing. What I just said sounds horrible, but it's the truth. And so it's easy to say, I will give her the cookie and 3 hours later she'll play and it'll come down. But I would prefer, in my life, to give the insulin, let her have the cookie, keep the blood sugar from spiking. And if she were to get low 2 hours later, we would readdress it then by bumping it. Like bumping that line around on the Dexcom. Like, that's where you would want to go back and like listen to the episode with like Dr. Ponder, where we talk about just like not like keeping that line from bouncing around. Just nudge it up a little bit when it's a little low, or nudge it down a little bit when it's a little high. And that's harder with shots. Don't get me wrong. You see 150 blood sugar. If I see 150 blood sugar, I bolus. If you see one, you've got to make the decision: is this worth sticking a needle in my kid for? And so that's a very personal thing. And it's certainly, I'm not right or wrong, and you're not right or wrong. But what I can tell you is that Arden's A1C has been between 5.9 and 6.2 for 3 years. With that idea, like not accepting a high blood sugar, just pushing it back. But it's a lot of work, and you're new. So I would tell you you're doing great. By the way, my daughter's blood sugar was 400 a lot when she was first diagnosed. Like, don't get me wrong.
And doctors have told me, 3 to 4 months, it's going to stay like that. And it's hard for me to accept that, just because it's like, no, I want it regulated, just because I'm a controlling person in some senses. But I also have totally accepted that she's so happy right now. She's okay. And of course, my dad and my mom have been outstanding. They've jumped in full throttle. They want to do the blood testing. They want to give her the shots because they want to know that I can count on them. And I mean, my dad is like, that 400, JoAnn, that can hurt her eyes. JoAnn, that can do, and it's like, I understand that, but right now we're trying to control her, right?
Yeah. JoAnn, I would bet, just having talked to you for literally under 40 minutes now, if your daughter was magically wearing an insulin pump today, you would almost experience a 180-degree shift in how you're thinking about this. Just being able to do insulin without shots, I can hear in your voice, like you would start to embrace the rest of it very, very quickly. It's just you're I don't want to say you're limited right now, because there are a lot of people who are not, I know people who don't mind giving themselves 20 shots a day if that's what they need.
Right.
And they'll make these bump arounds no problem. I also know how hard it is to stick a needle in a 2-year-old. It's not the most fun thing in the world.
The best part is that when you do with my daughter, she counts on her fingers. Like, she'll tap her fingers, because we count to 10 together.
Right.
And she'll tap with her fingers. She'll just look at you and she'll tap.
She's getting
There's no tears. There's
so
no
cool.
fussing.
Good for her. That's excellent. So my point is that I'm with your dad. But me and your dad are on the same team.
I'm not going to let him listen to this.
You're not going to let him listen to it? What's his name?
Chris.
I'm on Team Chris. And so it just and listen, you are too. You're just in the middle of the fight. You don't have the luxury of walking in like your dad does once a week and going, I don't think this is right. Like, you're living through it 24 hours a day. You're the one who's, worried about other things, like not dying because you're not asleep. Like, you want to sleep, but you need to sleep. She needs to sleep. Like, there's a lot more going on for you. What I would say is that I think that over time, all these experiences just build on each other, and you just get better and better and better and better at it. And you already have the most important thing, which is sort of the attitude and the confidence. I think you'll find yourself probably every couple of months looking back and going, I can't believe I used to think that, or I can't believe we used to do it that way, because now I do this because I figured something else out.
And that is what stinks with me. I'm such a schedule person. I'm really OCD, and the idea of constant changes is what's making me a whole new person.
Yeah.
It is constant change. Every single day, something's different.
Yep. And I would tell you that I was almost the opposite and still helped in the same way. Like, I'm such a fluid person. Like, I can just go with anything. And I was not regulated at all. So I got a little more of the regulation of diabetes in me, and that helped me too. You'll get a little more of the fluidness in you, and that'll help you.
Absolutely.
So neither way is a great way to live. Like, my example always is that, I've been a stay-at-home dad for 16 years. If I got up in December and it was 56 degrees outside, I was like, we're going to the zoo. When's it ever 56 degrees in December? And I would drop everything I was doing and not think of anything. And now my life's not quite that simple, but I learned how to make it like that again, but still have like regulation. And you are probably trying to hold the ocean in your hands, and that's not going to work either. Like, you can't really. Diabetes is not something you can set a schedule for and expect it to adhere to the schedule. But if you stay flexible to what's happening, then then you can make it seem like it's sticking to a schedule. It's a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but you'll get the blood sugars you're looking for. It's really, it really is odd how the only thing that really makes you better at it is time dealing with it. And as long as you're willing to keep learning about it as it goes, that's always going to be super valuable. And that seems like what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm not giving myself, I have yet to Google anything. I'm not going to lie. I have not gotten on Google. I have done all my learning via friends, JDRF, podcast, of course. I mean, everything has just been what's driven me to be like, okay, I can do this. Because there's other moms out there doing it. And dads. Not just moms, dads too.
I would tell you 10 years ago, I didn't look at all, but if I would have looked, there would have been nothing to see, because I don't have the oldest diabetes blog on the internet. There's a handful of them that are a year or a year and a half or so older than mine, but there just weren't a lot. Nobody was talking about it in ways that you could find it. I'm sure there were message boards I didn't know about and stuff like that back then, but now you can really find people really easily and have these conversations and pick their brains and stuff like that. I think it's a real value. But having said that, I didn't do any of that. I hid in my house and watched my daughter and got back information and made sense of it and made changes until it got better and better and better. It was slow going without the technology. It got much easier when we got the OmniPod. And then after that, we got a Dexcom, and it got much, much easier again. And then all those experiences I suddenly had ways to really put them into practice.
That's the best part. This technology has, I think, also been a really big strength for me of just carrying us of like, all right, once we get that OmniPod, which is technically in 2 weeks, we're getting our trial for the week.
Oh, cool.
Here comes the OmniPod after that, of course. But I have not hesitated to throw myself into the technology.
No, you're doing great. And why would you listen? People can do whatever they want. I'm absolutely not coming down on anybody, but I don't want to be the guy who is like, oh, well, we do it like this. And somebody says, oh, that's how they did it 10 years ago, and I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. And I don't want to change for no reason either. But when something makes sense, it makes sense,
Absolutely.
And so, cool. I'm going to, after we're done, I'm going to have to ask you, how did you find the process of the demo pod? But I'll talk to you about that later. So all right. So you're in a good place. You're not freaking out when you see high blood sugars, which is huge, because I have in the past, and I've heard many other people talk about you just beating themselves up over and over again. You're not getting involved in that, which is great, because the unspoken part of this is that you can't be a good provider, caregiver, and mom to your daughter if you're wrecked. You know what I mean? If you're mentally a mess, if you're exhausted, none of this is going to matter. So
right.
You have to really take care of yourself. There's a balance you have to strike pretty quickly. And not freaking out about stuff that, like a blood sugar getting out of hand is a really good first step. It really is. So good for you. And you're also starting to wonder about other things. I would say it's so hard to even all the way back, we started talking about your high threshold on your Dexcom, and I wanted to tell you to push it down because you want to be able to make an adjustment, but it sounds like she's shooting up and coming right back again. I think your adjustment is your pre-bolus or your pre-injection, right, not so much the top. But having said that, after the Girl Scout cookie example, I would have liked to have seen you give her insulin for the cookie. So that's where a lower high threshold, I don't know where you would start, maybe at 180, and ours is at 140. But at 180, you could say to yourself, oh wow, she's 180. I don't want her to be that high. Oh, she's sitting there. I could give her a little insulin here and bring this down.
And this is where the shout out to my daycare goes to Tammy. She wanted to do it.
Good for her.
And I said no.
But she's going to win next time. I don't know. Next time you're going to be like, I'm listening.
The only reason I said no is because I honestly wanted to see the data. Yeah. I wanted to see what does that cookie do to her.
But what would you do if it happened again tomorrow?
I would give her the shot.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. Have an experience, learn from it, make an adjustment.
Is that okay? Is it okay to
Sure, it's okay.
As a trial and error of we're going to watch you go high.
Right? I don't think it's just okay. I think that there's no way else to figure it out.
Okay.
Right.
And I mean, that's one of the things that I feel like us new moms just need to know, that it is okay. Don't think you're sitting here using your child as a test dummy, because you're not technically doing that. You're just trying to say what works best for your child.
Without any experience, you can't make a decision.
Exactly.
So look, I don't want your kid's blood sugar to be 275, but if it needs to be 275 once so that you can figure out how to handle a cookie, then good. But just don't be the person who watches it happen 10 times before you can talk yourself into it. Once you see a pattern, believe it. Believe the pattern.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right. And go from there. All right, ready? Let's see. Arden's blood sugar. We did a pre-bolus at 1225 and it's 1252. My math is a little rough, but that's right around a half an hour. And what's your blood sugar? You can guess. Go ahead.
Oh, gosh. See, that's hard for me to guess. I would guess 136.
115.
Oh,
so
I was too high.
You were too good. Wait till you see how good you're going to be at guessing blood sugars. I don't even need Arden to test anymore. I'm like, test your blood sugar so that I can see your 160 like I think you are. And then, actually, I'm sorry, just adjusted. We're 110 with a stable arrow. So that's...
I can't wait to get to that between 100 and 200 mark.
But listen, little tiny kid, little amounts of insulin, the different foods are going to hit you really hard. The filling in that cookie was probably your downfall, like that kind of thing. But you also don't want your kid to grow up never having a Girl Scout cookie. So you'll figure it out.
I also want to let her, she needs to know, all right, I'm at 105. I can give myself a cheese stick. I can eat a pickle. She loves pickles. I can eat a pickle instead and have my snack without my number being affected at all.
You're going to learn so much in the coming years. I always want to tell people too that sometimes it feels like it takes forever, but it doesn't really. If you're really paying attention to it, you pick it up a lot quicker than you imagine you're going to.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are you? Let's see. What are my other questions? Are you and your husband fighting? Don't tell me that. I don't want to get you in trouble.
I'm not going to lie. This has been a trial and tribulation for my husband and I.
Of course.
I definitely took this head on. When we were at the hospital, I had one cry. And that was the initial cry when they checked her blood sugar and it was at 492. And doctors were saying DKA, and I had no idea what DKA was. No idea. So that was my one moment. And I think when my husband initially found out and heard that type 1 diagnosis, he immediately said, this is my fault. What did we do? What did I do?
Oh, well, that's terrible. Why did he think that?
I think that's that initial thought of when you hear diabetes, and that's where people don't understand the difference between type 1 and type 2. And I had a great health teacher, I think, in high school because I knew the difference. And I asked my husband later on, I said, do you know the difference? And he said, no. And I was like, I know we all had health class in high school, but I had a stellar health teacher, or at least I listened pretty well.
I would say this. I would say that most parents find a way in their head to feel like it's their fault.
Exactly.
So I would have this like burning feeling like I did something wrong, like I took her out in public and she got sick or something, and it opened her up to the situation, and that's right. Not true, or it is true, and who the heck would know? My wife, there's a lot of endocrine issues on my wife's side of the family, no type 1, but other endocrine issues. She's like, oh, it's obviously my fault. It's kind of no one's fault.
It's not anybody's fault at all.
Right. It's just life. And,
it is.
Yeah, and it's just you just are with the very unlucky winners of a lottery that no one wants to have a ticket in.
He's now finally, 8 weeks in. Just this weekend, I put Addie in a swimsuit because we went outside to go swimming, and we change her diaper, and you give her a diaper, and she puts her diaper in the garbage, and he just looks at her and he goes, "She's going to be all right."
Yeah,
I mean he just said that out loud, and I said, "Absolutely." I mean. Not the fact that she can put her own diaper away, but
no, but they learn stuff. Tell your husband that there are countless people living very well with type 1 diabetes all the time, and they're doing great.
And he knows that.
Yeah.
It's his baby girl, and it's the idea of having a daughter who has an incurable disease right now. Right now, because I wholeheartedly think in her generation there's going to be something that comes up. So
Listen, at the very least, before she's even in school, an artificial pancreas setup would make a lot of this insanely easier.
Oh, I know. And what keeps me going at the same time, too, and this is also for my cousin, is she gets to grow up knowing nothing different. And I can see where it's hard for those children who are diagnosed at 12, and they were able to have a soda. They were able to have a piece of cake and not have any problems with it. Well, my daughter gets to see it right away, right here, right now, and doesn't have to grow up and have something taken from her.
There's no before to miss.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I for the most part, I think I agree with that. I mean, Arden was 2, so I don't think she has a before to miss. It still doesn't stop her from, she can see how other people live. So
exactly.
She's still a little like, hey, this sucks.
Right.
And, I know she was at a, what was she at the other night? Somebody's house. It was a birthday party, though. It wasn't a house. It was at a park. It was at a nearby park, and these girls were having a birthday party. And I struggled with her blood sugar a little bit, and it was high, and we were really pouring insulin on. So, a lot of insulin remotely. And I was just getting it to come down, and it was coming down. And she's like, they're having cupcakes. And I was like, of course they are. That's perfect. And so I tried can you just bring the cupcake home with you and eat it like an hour from now? And she's like, I just want to be normal and eat the cupcake. And I was like, right on. And then I gave her this crazy bolus. Her blood sugar it sucked. When she got there, it was so perfect. It was just a little low. And we nudged it with something, and I didn't correct it enough. So it just jumped up on her. And then she's like 250, and I go to push it, but she's out in the heat, and she's probably getting dehydrated, and the insulin's not working. I'm shoving more and more. I'm texting her. I'm like, do it again. Units and units of insulin, and it's not moving. Mm-hmm. And then finally, when she's going to have food, I'm like, okay, let's just bolus crazy here and move it. And so we get it down. It's dropping. It's like, I think she was like 210 diagonal down. I was like, oh, we're going to be great in like a half an hour. And then she's like, cupcake. And I was like, all right. So I think a cupcake normally, I'm eyeballing it. I would have given her about 3.5 units for the cupcake. And I was like, bolus 6 units and go ahead and eat the cupcake. And then like 2 hours later, her blood sugar was fine. But I was just like, all right, you're right. Just eat the cupcake.
Exactly.
I'm not going to, what are we going to do?
Not worth the fight. We have a way to correct it. Yeah.
I'm just not going to make her throw away a cupcake at a birthday party or be the one who's bringing it home. It's like, I can eat it later because of my diet. Like, I just was like, just eat it, and here's what we'll do, Mm-hmm. So, yeah, listen, you're more together than I am, and I've been at this for like a decade. So,
I like to hear that, but it's like sometimes am I? And I see people saying they're in a numb phase. And I see that on the diabetes Facebook groups, and it makes me sad because it's like, are you really numb, or are you just learning to accept it? Is there a difference between being numb and saying, I'm okay?
Yeah, I don't think it might just be what you call it. Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes I think it's just a matter of what perspective you put yourself into. You just might have had more experiences in your life that opened you up to being able to adjust your perspective more quickly. And other people will find it in their own time too. But I like how you're thinking about it. I like how you're doing. Like, there was a part when you first started talking, I was like, oh my God, this woman has her 18-month-old's blood sugars are like at 110. And then you're like, they're like 400 sometimes. And I was like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. And you're still all good about it. I was like, good for you. I didn't expect that, So you surprised me a little bit. That was kind of excellent. And at the same time, I'm not like, I don't feel like, not that it's my place, but I don't feel like I have to tell you, hey, those blood sugars aren't okay, because you don't want them there, and it sounds like you're finding ways to stop it. So
right. I don't like them. I kind of accept them, and I know I can't attack it full throttle because there's still a little girl on the other end of that. I mean, I don't want to upset her and send her up and down and all over the place.
The only thing I would say to you, I mean, if you looked at me and said, Scott, tell me one thing you think I should do that I'm not doing, I would say I would correct high blood sugars. And I'm all about it. And it sounds like you're doing that anyway. So yeah, we're jumping that bandwagon. We jumped it a little bit slow just to see, okay, do we really get this? And we do. Makes sense. That makes sense. 8 weeks. You're talking about 8 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Please stop. We're on our 8th week right now. My gosh, you're gonna have your own podcast. I don't know. I mean, I want to be my own welcome committee. I want so many moms out there because it is just so hard for this new moms that I don't think
there's enough for new parents when they first find out.
Yeah, I know. It's such a personalized thing. It's hard to, like, trust me, as a person who's had a blog for 9 years, like, it's so hard to just succinctly put something together that's like, this is what you should see. I just think it doesn't work that way. I think you just have to have experiences, and you have to have people share their experiences with you, and it takes a little bit of time, and like it or not, huge life-shifting adjustments like this, there's no instruction manual for it. You don't get to read, you don't get to read the frequently asked questions page of diabetes and just be like, oh, right on, I got it.
Yep, that's where hashtag one step in front of the other comes ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Just do my best. All right, well, I really appreciate you coming on the show. The hour flew by. You're fantastic.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you one question at the end here. And so you said you were getting a demo pod from OmniPod.
Correct.
Did you hear about that through the podcast?
Actually, I did not. My doctor's office, the endocrinologist, they basically require us to do a trial as parents.
Right, sure.
And my doctor immediately said, I want her doing OmniPod, just because of the type of activity she is and how much of a parent as we throw ourselves in. So she said, you guys would be ideal for OmniPod.
That's excellent. That's great. So the doctor set you up with a demo then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. Good for you.
Yeah.
Listen, I wanted to take credit for it, but I can't take credit for everything.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault.
It was cool that you guys are big supporters, and it's nice to see that that's a big sponsor for you.
My ego got in the way there for a second. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the OmniPod, I just have seen so many positive things that I am very anxious to see it move forward in Addie's life. So
cool. No, I think you're going to have a great time with it. I really do. I mean, again, I've said this a million times, and I don't know how people would believe me or not. Like, I'm not going to take an ad from, like, just anything and tell you that it works for diabetes. I couldn't just, like if Animus, I'm sure Animus makes a great pump, but if they wanted to, buy an ad in the show, I would certainly let them buy an ad in the show, but I wouldn't be able to give you any personal, references about it. But with Omnipod, I can tell you that, we've just been really thrilled with it for countless years. So
I'm excited.
Yeah, good for you. That's excellent. Oh, all right. Well, JoAnn, I don't know what we're going to call this episode, but I'll figure that out at some point. And when I put it up, I will let you know. And
awesome.
I don't know exactly when that'll be, but it should probably be in the next month or so.
Outstanding.
JoAnn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. Thank you, JoAnn, for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing Adilyn's story. Thank you to OmniPod for sponsoring this episode. If you're enjoying the Juicebox podcast, please leave a rating and a review on iTunes. Most importantly, if the podcast is helping you and you think it can help somebody else, tell them about it. Share the Juicebox podcast. Share your Juicebox. Don't bogart the Juicebox.